Well, it looks like you're the one who needs to be taught a lesson, pal. Class is Pain 101. The instructor's Casey Jones.
Look, I don't want to fight you.
Well, tough rocks, pal.
Cup of coffee in the big time, yeah. Cup of coffee in the big time.
Hey, what do you say we both be independent together, huh?
We have the tools, we have talent. It's Miller time.
Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter.
Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
Well, that's great. Either I have a monster in my kitchen or I'm completely crazy.
I don't think you're crazy. Maybe I am insane. Maybe I am insane.
Mm-hmm. Pizza dude's got 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
You know what you need? You need a Brazilian plastic surgeon.
I've got one that can see.
I guess one person can make a difference. Enough said.
It's showtime.
All right, welcome to Comic Book Radio, everybody. Thank you for being here. This is episode 233. I'm your host, Peter Cimetti. Tonight, my guest is Brett EICHENBERGER, and we're going to be talking about his film, Flash of Beauty, Paranormal Bigfoot. I saw it, and it's nice. It's a really nice movie. It's a nice documentary. It's got really great production value. I'll have to tell Brett that when he gets on. But it was just great, and it was a nice take on Bigfoot, and it's something that I've kind of thought about for a while now. I've talked about this on the show. I've mentioned about my various theories, this being one of them, and I'm looking forward to talking to Brett about this tonight. I think this is going to be a great conversation. So if you're into Bigfoot, if you're into the paranormal, if you're into all that stuff, this is the show for you guys tonight. So before I bring him on, I want to say hello to those of you in the chat. We got Ben here. What's up, Ben? He says, evening, Pete and chat. Missed the old intro, but the new one is growing on me. I know, YouTube's getting, a little bit stricter with the copyright enforcement of things. I'm noticing more and more videos flirting with getting copyright claims that didn't really get them before. And even I'm hearing reports about copyright strikes, which is what you really don't want, because that could get your channel shut down. So this was edited, the intro tonight was edited so that nothing comes up. There's no claims, there's nothing like that. We got just the right amount of time, I guess, on those clips. So there you go, Ben. Cole, what's up, Cole? Thank you for being here. Good to see you as well. We got Chris here as well. How's it going, Chris? Let's see. Paul says, I miss original Yoda. Wise puppet beats backflipping CGI character any day of the week. Oh, I agree. 100%. Good to know I'm not alone. All right. So without further ado, give him a big Comic Book Radio welcome. It's the first time for him on this show. We got Mr. Brett EICHENBERGER. What's up, Brett?
Hey, not much. Like I told you earlier, I was out late last night, so I've got a little bit of a raspy voice.
No problem. It sounds good, though,
Yeah.
Sometimes a little bit of that works.
Yeah. People tell me all the time I've got a face for radio, and now I've got a voice for radio. So.
There you go. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, everything's aligning. In regards to your film, when I watched it, it's got great production values, and the narrative throughout, the way that you have the different encounters being told by the experiencers. It's really great, and I like the whole kind of point of the film. It's nothing that I've really seen before in regards to a theory on Bigfoot, and every single time I have my own theories, and this being one of them too, that Bigfoot, or at least a species of what we believe to be Bigfoot, is of a paranormal nature. What brought this about?
Well, it's interesting, Peter. The way it really came about was we were doing our first documentary, which is called A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed. And when we first got into this, of course, growing up in Oregon, and when I say we, I mean the production team, which is Jill Remensteiner, the producer, and Michael Ferry, the cinematographer. Both of these films were essentially made by the three of us. And when we got into this growing up in Oregon, we thought Bigfoot was, potentially a real thing. And it was maybe like a relic hominid or some sort of an ape, North American primate, if you will. And so we started making this documentary in 2020. And what was interesting was we kept hearing these strange stories. And a lot of times the strange stories would come on after the camera would turn off. People would say things like, oh yeah, and I saw orbs too, but I don't want people to think I'm crazy. So I didn't mention that. And eventually we got to the point where we thought, we're going to need to do a sequel that gets into all of this stuff, because it was uncanny how many different people from different regions of the country, different walks of life, were telling us all of these crazy stories, some of which are, have made it into the film. So, we kind of obviously it's healthy to be skeptical, and I would challenge anybody to, I'm sorry, not challenge. I would suggest anybody be skeptical going in to watch this film, because we don't have a ton of physical proof, although we do have some really alarming, footage and evidence that we present in this video that strongly points to the paranormal. Nobody has a body. Nobody has, some of those things that science would need in order to qualify this as being a real thing. But what we do have is we have emotional testimonials from people who have never been the same after having these experiences. And so, hearing those emotional testimonials firsthand as we were doing the first documentary led us to really say, what, as wacky as all of this stuff sounds, and it sounds crazy, we've got to do a documentary on it. We got to tell the truth. We got to tell the whole story about Bigfoot. We can't throw out stuff just because we think it sounds strange.
Did you think that there was a paranormal connection to Bigfoot before any of this stuff went down with the documentaries?
I'd heard some small things, like, for instance, I'd heard of folks tracking Bigfoot in the snow, for instance, and the tracks would stop, like in the middle of a snowfield, and they wouldn't turn around. And there was no explanation, so that you wouldn't see the tracks. Yeah, it was just like they just disappeared into thin air. And then we've heard some other people that have this phenomenon called mind speak. And the phenomenon of mind speak is not just a Bigfoot phenomenon. It's a phenomenon with, telepathy, obviously, and when I say telepathy between people, but folks that claim to have been abducted by aliens have had these same types of phenomena occur. With Bigfoot, it seems to be very common. They have a variety of talents, if you will. I like to almost think of them as superheroes because of their magical abilities. They can get inside your head and they can disappear and they can run real fast. And so, yeah, we were just kind of scratching the surface, or we had just scratched the surface on the paranormal when we really got started. But the more and more we worked on the production of this film, the more we found out, the more it surprised us.
Have you ever had an encounter?
I haven't had a class A encounter. Both myself and Jill Remensteiner and Michael Ferry, the trio of us, have seen eye shine. And this is like a self-sustaining eye shine. It's not a flashlight. It's not the glow of the back of the eyeball. This is something that is not unlike fireflies. They're creating their own bioluminescence somehow, and we have seen that. We were invited to come out to a reservation that will be unnamed for now, and we observed it. And the first thing you do when you see something like that is you try and debunk it in your head. And being filmmakers, it's our job to, because we have a history in narrative film, so it's our job to try and fool the audience with visual effects, right? So Mike and I are kind of like teching out, going, well, how could they be doing this? How could they be fooling us? And why would they be fooling us? And you get to a point where you run out of explanations. And even so much that, the hosts encouraged us to go back to that location the next day and see how rugged it was, and see how there wasn't any lights or anything else of that sort. And so I was able to get out my phone and get just a little picture of one eyeball, and you can see it glowing and you can kind of see it closing. And I feature that in the documentary. It's fascinating. So we've had that happen. We've heard various wood knocks. We've found prints. We've found structures, both big and small. We had one on that same reservation the next night. We had one stand up and run off. You could hear it stomping as it ran off. And you could just tell it was big. You could feel the earth move.
Now, you don't need to tell me what the name of this reservation is, but it doesn't have to be in South Dakota, does it?
No.
Okay.
A little bit more south.
Because there's a reservation in South Dakota where they have had quite the history of Bigfoot type sightings as well.
Yeah.
So I was wondering. Well,
and not to get too ahead of ourselves, Peter, but that's the Flash of Beauty 3 is going to be 100% native experiences.
Oh,
so we're hoping to get out to South Dakota. We've got a very close friend who's in the very beginning of a Flash of Beauty Paranormal Bigfoot, TJ Ravenwolf, and we hope to accompany him out to South Dakota. But
nice.
As early as Tuesday, we'll be traveling to Alaska to start doing filming.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So you guys are really you're hitting up a lot of the hot spots,
mm-hmm.
and I'm very curious to see what you guys find, because this was probably one of the best put together Bigfoot documentaries I've ever seen. Usually they're kind of like a little hokey. They're entertaining, but they're a little hokey. They're not really on like the seriousness side, and the production value really isn't there, and it's kind of more just constant levels of testimonial through a narrator. You don't really see the people who are talking. It's kind of like, and Bigfoot threw a rock at people, and it's like, okay, but this was really concrete as far as documentaries go about this subject, especially because of the fact that you're really focusing on this paranormal aspect of it. Now, in regards to the paranormal aspect, there was a lot of conversation on the documentary about the different kinds of particles, waves, energy, the fields, etc., that people report from these sightings. Do you think that plays any part into why maybe sometimes it's so difficult to capture these creatures on film?
Yeah. And this is where, to me, it gets really interesting, because going back prior to the beginning of the production of this film, I really wanted to try and plant the seeds for a scientific explanation for all of this. Just a theory, a hypothesis, or something like that. And we were extremely fortunate to find Dr. Simeon Hine. And, I'll admit,
he's been on this show before. Simeon's great.
Simeon is fantastic. And Simeon knows a lot, and I think Simeon's hypotheses are right on. Not that I'm a quantum physicist to check them or anything, but a lot of this stuff is out there. It's, what he's talking about has already been proven in labs on a small scale, mind you. But, you multiply some of these things, and you've got some explanation as to how and why Bigfoot could just disappear before your eyes. And to us humans, that sounds crazy, but human beings only have the ability to see 1% of the visible light spectrum. An eagle, for instance, can see far more than a human. An eagle can see UV light, and therefore in the air it can track a urine trail from the animal in order to find where that animal is hiding out. So we tend to think that just because we're the most intelligent being on the planet, that we know and we can see everything, and so many of us are seeing is believing type. But the truth is there's just a lot happening around us that we just can't see. So we wanted to get into that a little bit, and we wanted to kind of think about how, maybe Bigfoot had evolved to use some of these things, and and a lot of these things aren't specifically for hiding from humans, but it's hiding from prey. They are the apex predator in the woods, and you've got a pretty good advantage if you can sneak up and just snatch a deer and he doesn't see you. So there is, in my opinion, there's a scientific explanation, and I feel like we're getting closer to crack the code. Did I just totally go off and not answer your question?
I don't know what my question was at this point.
Okay,
I'm sure you got to whatever I had said in some kind of way that made sense. No, hey, ramble away. You're the guest. Now, what I found really interesting was a lot of people that were reporting seeing, like, they were all saying, like, it was like a Predator movie. Like the way the cloaking, kind of the light bending on, when they would see this kind of thing. And I thought that was kind of interesting. Whenever I hear a reference that sounds like something that we've seen before, it always makes me wonder what came first. Is it that people are using that point of reference from someone's imagination who created that on film? Or is it the people who created that film were using a point of reference based on stories that they heard?
This is a really great question. And there's not a lot of people that know this, but I'm going to drop a little factoid here, that the visual effects artist that created the Predator effect just happened to be the son of J. Allen Hynek, who was in charge of Project Blue Book.
You're right.
Yeah. So, there has been quite a few alien sightings. One famous one by a young man, about 15 years old in Las Vegas, I think it was a couple of years ago, who saw an alien in his backyard and it said that it was blurry. Those were his words, that it was blurry or it was out of focus. And this is the same type of cloaking effect that we're kind of talking about here. So you have to wonder if Dad, gave his son some knowledge and he took that knowledge and incorporated it into Predator.
What's interesting too is, and Simeon mentions this also in the film, is the fact that these kinds of things are not just only in development in defense departments, but are also being patented.
Yeah.
So it's like the technology exists. Technology exists to the point that they're trying to find different ways to utilize it more than they already are.
Yeah.
So if we've already kind of come up with a way to do these sorts of things, who's to say that we didn't either get introduced to that from something or that it doesn't already exist in some capacity?
Yeah, exactly. That's my theory as well, is that, this technology, apparently people in the military say that the actual technology that we have is between 50 to 100 years ahead of our consumer electronics, the things that we have in our everyday homes.
I mean, that tracks, to be honest, with the way it's been going.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, if that has been reverse engineered or if it's been discovered, then it's definitely out there and it's in military use. There's no question in my mind.
Now, something that I'm thinking about here is that not all Bigfoot, and I don't know how you feel, but not all Bigfoot, Sasquatch, etc., these kinds of beings are paranormal or evolved or unevolved or whatever. I think there's all kinds of different sorts of these species, and they all have different sorts of origins. And some of them, maybe we're just plain mistaking them as Bigfoot, but maybe there is some kind of disguise or effect or something that makes us think, and that's all we can really associate it with. Very similar to how like ancient texts would describe something, and today we would say, oh, that's a spaceship, but then they wouldn't have called it spaceship.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like that's our point of reference.
Yeah.
What is your thought on that in terms of the different species type thing? How do you feel?
I agree with you 100%. I think it would be naive for us to assume that they're all the same. I mean, we can look at the humans, we can look at animal kingdom to know that. You know, and it really feels to me like what's up in Alaska is quite a bit different than what we have down here in the lower 48. And we're about to explore that when we go up there next week. But I certainly think that, you know, if nothing else, there's a different temperament. Especially, you know, they seem to be really grumpy in Texas and the southern United States. But, you know, even descriptions of skunk apes in Florida are a little bit different. The ones that we saw, the glowing eyes, those have been reported to have teeth that kind of stick out from their lower, I don't know what you call those, canines or whatever. You know, so they are quite a bit different. They have different temperaments. They have different needs and wants. They're just like people, you know, and I tell people this all the time, that, you know, you have good ones, you have bad ones, you have different colored ones, you've got short ones, tall ones, skinny ones, fat ones. You know, there is quite a variety out there, and that lines up with the sightings that people have had across the country.
And that's the thing that's interesting to me, is that not just this country, the United States, are there these kinds of sightings, but there's reports of this sort of stuff in other parts of the world that go back even like hundreds, if not sometimes thousands of years. The descriptions sound uncannily like they're talking about a Sasquatch-like creature. Yeah.
I mean, the question is, you know, there's a lot of talk. People say, well, they're interdimensional. The question is are they completely interdimensional? Are all cryptids completely interdimensional? I've got friends who have seen portals. I think that I saw a portal, and Jill thought she saw a portal just a couple of weeks ago. This is on separate occasions up in the Sierra Nevadas, where there's a lot of Bigfoot sightings. And what it looked like to me was, it looked like cellophane that was stretched between two trees. And, you know, we're 8-9 miles out in the wilderness. There's no way there's cellophane stretched across trees. It looked like a cross between cellophane and a mirage, and it was kind of waving or glimmering in the distance. And we were on horseback at the time, and I turned over and I looked at it, and I was like, are you seeing this? You know, and it was probably 50 to 75 yards away. I don't know. You know what I mean? Are these things that are naturally being opened to other dimensions? And science says that there's, you know, a variety of different dimensions, 11 dimensions, whatever. So, you know, maybe there is a species, or maybe there's a naturally occurring event where these creatures have the ability to sense where one's going to open, and they just come in and out of it, or they can create them themselves. I think it's entirely possible, and science says it's possible.
Yeah, it seems like let's just say the Bigfoot that are there, they have certainly done a great job of being able to be in their surroundings, blend in their surroundings, survive and exist without us doing something about it for the most part. Yeah. But what always gets me, and they're obviously very good at this, but what gets me is when you have national parks posting up warnings about these creatures. It's if it's not real in any capacity, and they're just concerned for people because people have reportings or whatever, I'd imagine instead they would say, look, beware, there's, you know, large creatures here, there's a bear here, yada yada. But they'll by name a bunch of these places, but Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's not a joke, it's a serious warning. And if there's no credence to any of it, why would you do that? Why would you put that there?
Yeah, I'm starting to think it's the worst kept secret in, like, the forestry bureaus, the BLMs, the National Park Service. You know, we've been told by multiple people that these rangers and whatnot are told to, or they have to sign non-disclosure forms. It's something that they don't want the public to know is truly out there. Or they're afraid the public might not come to national parks, might not recreate in national forests, might not camp anymore. You know what I mean? It could be devastating to certain economies if people thought that there was this, 8, 9, 10 foot, sometimes taller, Sasquatch out there that was, human headhunting or something. I mean, it's it's kind of scary, and I don't believe that that's what they do. But with that being said, we've got David Pilates and his work that says that a lot of people go missing in national parks that are never found, and there's truly no explanation for it. So could they be Bigfoot? Possibly. I can't discount that. Could they be aliens? Maybe. Could people be falling in holes? Yeah. Who knows? But it is within the realm of possibility, if they're out there. Well, I shouldn't say if, they are out there, but you never know.
Can you think of any kind of sinister reason that there might be a cover-up?
I don't know about any sinister reasons. I think a lot of it has to do with economics. And I have spoken to some folks that won't go on camera. I can't talk a lot about it because I've promised their privacy, but I have spoken to people that have worked with the government that have confirmed they have had interactions with Bigfoot, and that there is a system in place to control Bigfoot and keep them from the public. And you can think of it in terms of nuisance bears. We see these videos on YouTubes of bears like getting into somebody's car, and ripping up dashboards and stuff like that. Well, if a hungry Bigfoot starts getting food out of a trash can and finds that they're going to be able to keep doing that, then we're going to have a problem. And the last thing, the government wants are people taking pictures and videos of this stuff, in a general area. So it is something that exists. But as far as sinister goes, no, I don't think so. I think there are some out there that are certainly capable of some sinister stuff, I guess you could say.
You don't think that maybe, even if it's not all of them, because it wouldn't be all of them, but do you don't think maybe possibly there's some kind of like experimentation that had occurred that created these kinds of creatures or anything like that they don't really want the public to know, to ever look into? Because because my viewpoint on all of this stuff is, whether it's aliens, whether it's UFOs, Bigfoot, et cetera, as soon as you kind of provide one admission, of like, let's say, okay, yes, there's Sasquatch, we have conclusive proof, and this is what it is. It kind of starts saying, okay, well, number one, what else have you been keeping from us? Number two, it turns into, well, what does that really mean for everything? And then number three, if Sasquatch is in fact a paranormal type being that can teleport or this or that or whatever, it really does turn into, what the hell is this world?
Yeah.
And if you can utilize that tech and figure out how some kind of organic being is doing these things, it almost creates this weird, like Bigfoot's part of the military industrial complex sort of thing. And, and that's my author mind running away and getting crazy with it. But at the same time, it just makes me think, if there were a motive to cover up any of this sort of stuff, it really seems like you said, it's a lot of economical factors, but there also seems to be just a lot of like socio-political factors among the way that things work.
Yeah. Oh, and there is. There's no question about that. And this kind of takes us into the realm of things like Dogman and whatnot, which we have not made a film on, but through our journeys through the years, we've talked to multiple people that have seen Dogmen. We've heard multiple stories. I'm honestly still having a hard time wrapping my head around Dogman. But I've seen the fear in people's eyes, and we've heard a lot about how the Dogman are some sort of a bizarre government creation. They're assets, some people have called them. But we have never heard anything like that in regards to Bigfoot. Now, I shouldn't say never. Now, with that being said, rest in peace, the late Henry Franzoni, who shockingly passed away, about 3 weeks ago. He went on to our YouTube channel, A Flash of Bigfoot, on YouTube, and he dropped some bombs. In fact, those videos are called Henry Franzoni Drops a Bomb Part 1 and Henry Drops a Bomb Part 2. And I would encourage people to watch those. And they're quite different. I don't know how else to explain it. Henry knew a lot. Henry was a scientist. Henry was privy to some pretty incredible, information. And he talks about how he believes that Bigfoot are, in fact, a big part of, things from nuclear science to working in conjunction with scientists and engineers in the military. So I don't want to give anything away, but I would encourage people to watch that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Did not to harp on it, but was he sick? Was he ill?
No, Henry had some heart troubles in the past, and so I believe that's what I haven't heard an official cause of his passing, but I believe it was some sort of a cardiac event. And he had some heart surgery maybe 15, 20 years ago, and they had some trouble. They kind of put a timeline on his life. It was shocking to us. We found out actually on our way down to a shoot, and it was all very sudden. So,
wow.
Yeah, but he had a lot of knowledge, and he had Bigfoot encounters more times than he could count. He knew them. He kind of knew what made them tick. One of his theories was that drumming in the woods would excite them and get them interested in what you were doing, and that would attract them. And I think there's quite a bit of evidence to suggest that that's actually true. He did a documentary with the BBC called Drumming with Bigfoot that I would encourage everybody to watch. It's fantastic. It's a little corny. It was shot in the early 90s. It's on YouTube. But Henry is a huge, huge loss. He was a brilliant man. You'll see him in our first documentary, and then you'll see his YouTube videos and his entire interview on our page. I would definitely encourage people to watch that.
Wow. Well, following up a bit with what you're doing up in Alaska soon, I'm guessing you're aware of the Alaska Triangle.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of different reports, obviously, in that region. Including, probably the most famous, or one of the most famous, I should say, the first widely acknowledged UFO report, the Kenneth Arnold sighting. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of other bases and whatnot that have been kind of bandied about as existing, and there's a lot of reports with that. Do you think that you're going to find anything other than Bigfoot up there?
We go out there with an open mind, I don't know, but we are going to have eyeballs on the ground and in the sky. That's about all I can say. There's a tribe not too far away from where we're going that has an otter man that folks have seen. There's Nuntanuk, which is they've become famous through Alaskan Killer Bigfoot, and Nuntanuk is potentially a type of much more aggressive Bigfoot. They may not even be the same Bigfoot that we have down here in the lower 48, or at least in the Pacific Northwest where I'm at. So I don't know. I mean, I'm going to be really stoked if I see a grizzly bear. I'm going to be honest with you. You know what I mean?
Be careful out there.
Yeah. No. This is like in the car. You know what I mean? But we're going to try and Mike and I have been preparing for this trip and testing out lenses, and we've got this zoom lens that's massive, so we can be nice and safe grabbing, shots of bears pulling salmon out of waterfalls or whatever it is we come across. Yeah.
Has anyone, to your knowledge, tried to use like LiDAR or anything else to kind of map the woods, or just have drones fly over and see what's what, set up trail cams in areas that are purported to have these sightings?
Trail cams have been tried, and occasionally you'll get something, like you'll get a smear or you'll get a close-up of fur. Most of those have been debunked. They seem to be able to, I'm sure they can see the infrared light, number one, but they seem to be able to sense the intent and or the electromagnetic energy that's coming off of these cameras. They definitely know that there's some sort of I don't know if they understand the concept of photography, but they understand the concept of it being some sort of a trap, if you will. So that's kind of out of the question. Drones, on the other hand, are a little bit different. And I think that, as technology gets better, I think we're going to start seeing more and more Bigfoot on drones. Thermal imaging on drones. I have seen a purported military FLIR video of one being tracked that was very highly sophisticated. And that was hard to debunk. That has not been released online. I've seen it privately.
Oh, okay.
And it was very interesting. But I don't know for 100%. I have not talked to the person that filmed it, I've seen it secondhand. So I do think that at some point or another, Bigfoot's going to run out of options because technology is just moving too quick with AI and everything else. I think you're going to be able to take a map and take data and start making predictions. That's not to say that they won't outsmart us and come up with something. That's just how evolution works.
At the same time, isn't it such a shame that we could have definitive proof on video or anything like that of Bigfoot, and yet I don't know how many people would believe it. I don't know if they'll go, could just be a good hoax.
We're kind of past that point now, aren't we, with AI?
Yeah.
And I've seen
deep fake Bigfoot.
Yeah, deep fake. Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, you can virtually do anything in a matter of like 30 seconds with ChatGPT or any other AI tool on your phone, on your computer. But I have seen photographs that I believe are legitimate that people won't post online because they don't want to be ridiculed. They don't want people coming to their land. They don't want to give up their Sasquatch friends, their Bigfoot friends. And I know that sounds crazy, but these are close shots. These are convincing close shots that are every bit as good, if not better, than the Patterson-Gimlin film. And for folks out there that are listening that want to see stuff like this, go to Bigfoot conferences, talk to people. There are people that have these, this abundance of land, and they have Bigfoot living in the forest on the edge of their land, and they will get photos. Bigfoot can only move so fast. They move fast, but only so fast. And eventually people get, these aren't the greatest photos in the world, but some of them are very convincing, very convincing.
What are your thoughts about
thoughts
about the Patterson-Gimlin?
I think that the Patterson-Gimlin film is 99.9% authentic. And there's a lot of reasons I think that. One is I think that the Bigfoot in that moves too well. I think the suit fits too well. If it were a suit, I think it would be too expertly made for someone to not come forward and admit it. And I know what people are thinking, that somebody did come through and admit it, but what they produced as the suit was a gorilla suit. I mean, it was garbage.
Yeah, it's really nothing at all close to what's on that film. And the film is convincing, but I still have a hard time believing it. Yeah. And it's maybe it's just one of those things, But I haven't seen anything as convincing. And I think the circumstance of, they're going out there to pretty much look for Bigfoot, and they find Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing because of the fact that, like, the extended film, they do try to follow Bigfoot, but eventually it's a little too fast, and then it kind of just is gone.
Yeah.
And that's something that is kind of in line of what you've been hearing about, that these things just disappear.
Yeah, they just disappear. And I've actually been to Bluff Creek. I've stood where Roger Patterson stood to film that shot. It's not a very easy place to get to. These two guys, Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson, lived in Yakima, Washington. And Yakima, Washington is on the Yakima Indian Reservation. It's right next to the Mount Adams Gifford Pinchot National Forest. You know, these guys literally could have gotten on horses, trekked out, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours, whatever, and they could have gone and they could have made this movie. You know what I mean? So why did they feel like they had to lug a suit all the way down to, you know, this kind of random area near Willow Creek, to shoot this movie? You know, I mean, there's a few things that just don't add up as far as it being a hoax. One of the big things is, like what Dr. Meldrum says, and a couple of other primatologists, is that if it were a suit, what's been incorporated into the suit wouldn't have been known by primatologists for another 10, 15 years. You know, the way that the body moves and the way that the shoulders are on the neck and certain things like that. Those are discoveries that hadn't been made yet. Yet there they are in the film. That's why Dr. Meldrum is convinced. And he says that in our first documentary. He says, I'm as convinced as if I were standing on that sandbar watching it myself. And, you know, you got to look at all the evidence. You have to maintain a healthy skepticism, but Dr. Meldrum's a smart guy. You know, so you got to take his word for it too.
Why is it that you think that maybe we haven't had anything as conclusive or as striking as that footage since? Well,
there's a couple of questions, or a couple of responses. One is that it hasn't been released. It's like the FLIR footage I was just telling you. There is stuff out there, people just don't want to put it out there. And that's a kind of a hard mindset for people to wrap their heads around, you know, because you could be famous, you know, but it actually invites more problems than not. It's kind of like the research that shows that the folks that win the lottery blow it, and then they become poorer than they were before they won the lottery. If you don't know how to manage it correctly, you know, it can just open a can of worms. And I think there's a lot of truth to that with Bigfoot photos. Mark Parker, who we interviewed in the first film, talks about that. He says, if I got a clear photo, I wouldn't post it online. And that mentality is strong. So that is out there. It is out there. I don't know why we don't have a body. You know, I had a friend who claimed he found a body. This is back in the late 90s. And he said it was, you know, way too heavy to move. He went back, you know, 4 or 5 miles, hiked back to get a friend to help him grab the body. And when he came back, it was gone. You know, so there's dozens and dozens of stories out there like that. But I think eventually the disclosure may come from the federal government. I don't know. You know, we'll just have to find out.
Yeah. What would you say is the number one place in regards to Bigfoot sightings?
I think factually, actually, the number one place is Washington State. And I would agree with that. I think Washington, Oregon, and California are, if you want to see a Bigfoot, those are great places to start. Olympic National Park is a really good place to go. There are many sightings in Alaska. There are many sightings in Oklahoma, of all places. But I think that, you know, if you want to see a Bigfoot, then I would probably check the Olympic National Park. And I would say the Cascades, anywhere from the border of Canada all the way down to Mount Shasta.
Okay. Interesting. Now, other than Bigfoot, have you had any other kind of paranormal sighting or anything like that? Have you seen a UFO? Have you any kind of encounter, even if you're thinking like ghosts or anything like that? Any sort of that stuff in your life?
Yeah, I have. So coming up in, let's see here, this is October 19th and 20th. We'll be doing a conference out in Baker City, Oregon at the Geyser Grand Hotel. And the Geyser Grand Hotel is notoriously haunted. And it's actually famously haunted. I mean, Fuji TV has come over and done multiple TV shows there on ghosts. And I've been doing their TV commercials going back to the late 90s. And I've been staying there since then. And I'd never had anything happen up until about 4 or 5 years ago. I was staying in the most haunted room. And I was sound asleep, and I felt something tap on my shoulder as real as day. And I sat up in bed and I looked around the room, and it was just like, I just felt like there was something or someone standing there watching me. And so I literally, my heart was beating out of my chest. I don't get scared easily, because I tend to rationalize things. And so that's what I was doing, is I was running out of excuses to rationalize what had just happened to me. And meanwhile, my wife is sound asleep. She's knocked out cold. And so I'm sitting there, I'm sweating, heart's beating out of the chest. I'm like, okay, I've got to throw some water in my face so I don't have a panic attack or something. So I get up and I walk around the bed. And as I walk around the bed, it almost felt like I walked through like one of those misters or something that you sometimes see like in hot places, or a vent. But I felt like I walked through thick, cold, murky air. And as soon as I did that, immediately my whole presence changed. My emotional presence changed from fear to disgust, sadness, dread. And I immediately knew that whatever this entity or whatever this thing was in this room wanted me to feel the way that it felt. It was some sort of an emotional projection. It changed my life. I'll never forget it. And the backstory of the ghost that haunts that room is that she was a former prostitute, and she'd fallen in love with her client, and he rejected her, and so she killed herself. And so I kind of felt like I was a target. Like, you're a guy, you're horrible, so you need to feel the horror and the emotions that I felt. Yeah, I don't know how to explain it. And then 2 years later, we caught something on camera. We caught we put a wildlife cam in our hotel room, hoping to catch something. And the camera would go off like, whenever we moved around or whatever. It had I think it was a 0.5, it was like a half a second trigger. It was really quick. And so it goes off, we're moving around. And then all of a sudden, at about 3:03 a.m., the famous 3 o'clock in the morning thing, it's triggered, and we're stone cold asleep in bed, like cement. And this white mist moves right across the camera, and the temperature on the wildlife cam is fluctuating as it happens.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So those are my ghost experiences, and I've also seen a UFO or two. So pretty interesting.
Man.
Yeah.
So what inspired you to go down the Bigfoot path in terms of documentary filmmaking?
It's interesting. It's a risky career choice. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
And I was, it's like people were like, oh, aren't you afraid of the ridicule? You won't be taken seriously as a filmmaker. And I thought, you know what? There aren't a lot of Bigfoot films out there that aspire to be kind of like in the realm of the National Geographic. Something that takes the subject matter very seriously from a professional level. And there's nothing against what's out there. And I've watched them all, and I think they're all great. And I think they all have something else to add to the conversation. But what I wasn't seeing, aside from the stuff that's on TV, and I count the stuff that's on TV as entertainment, and some of that is scripted, some of it's not. Most of it is actually happening. Expedition Bigfoot, Finding Bigfoot. But, we thought that we needed to get into the weeds and really get the emotional component that nobody is sharing with us. Like, how did this affect people? How did it change their life? Because seeing the paranormal and experiencing the paranormal changes you for the rest of your life. You tend to see the world in a totally different way.
Yeah, you got to peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, exactly. You now know that what you were brought up learning isn't entirely true, that there really is something else going on, like you said, behind the curtain. And so I've just always had an interest in that, going back to when I was a little tiny kid, and the mysteries of the woods and Bigfoot and UFOs and Steven Spielberg movies, and being a kid of the 80s, I was like, man, Bigfoot is like a few miles. He might be living a few miles from my house. You know what I mean? Like, I really want to answer these questions, and life is short. So we dove in head first.
What is it about the Pacific Northwest that is so conducive to these sightings, especially if it's of a paranormal nature? What is there anything documented over there? Is there like any kind of like electromagnetic field that's weird, or any kind of geothermic activity? I mean, I know Mount St. Helens is over there.
Yeah.
But what's going on over there, do you think?
There's a lot going on, Peter. There's a lot going on in the Pacific Northwest. We've got, like you said, we've got volcanoes, we've got earthquakes, we've got strange weather. It's, a lot of the energy supposedly comes from different mineral content. There's a lot of water, a lot of flowing streams. A great example of this is the Columbia River Gorge, where you have lava beds and whatnot. And this is basically the river. It's the largest river west of the Mississippi, and it drains into the Pacific Ocean, and it separates Washington State from Oregon State, and then the Cascades run right across it. So you have this intersection of really strange things. There's areas where compasses don't work. So there's a lot of electromagnetic energy, potentially in some of these volcanic locations. Mount Adams is the most famous one. People have heard of East Eddy Ranch, where you're almost guaranteed something paranormal to happen. But a lot of the Pacific Northwest is like that. There's an area on the coast of Oregon, near Bandon, Oregon, that we feature in this film, that has all kinds of crazy stuff happening. I can't exactly put my finger on what it is. Like I said, if it's something underground, if it's something above ground, I don't know. But there's a lot of really, really weird stuff going on there.
Do you think that these creatures were here before us?
I'm leaning that way. And there's a ton of theories out there right now. One of the theories that I keep hearing is that they are actually the original humans. So they're actually, you look at the picture of the little monkey, and it grows up and it turns into a man, and it's like, you're like, where'd all the hair go, right? Well, Bigfoot might actually be the real humans, and humans might be genetically engineered from spacey visitors or aliens or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, because we're certainly not acclimated to living in a natural state on this planet. We have to do a hell of a lot.
Yeah. Well, some of us aren't. I mean, obviously, you could argue that Native Americans have got it all figured out. Or not just Native Americans, natives anywhere in the world, and they've adapted and whatnot. But yeah, I don't know, but there is a lot of, some people think they might be Nephilim, or however you say that. I can never get the pronunciation.
Yeah, no,
right.
that's correct.
So, but I am kind of like thinking about this, going, yeah, maybe they are the real humans. Who knows? Maybe we're the hybrids.
It's a fascinating thing. It's compelling because there's so many different avenues that point to that kind of being something to consider.
Yeah.
Whether it's culturally, and we have all these ancient texts that talk about these things where you're like, that they all sound like they're talking about this. And then we start seeing different things as they evolve with what we currently know, and we're like, maybe those weren't just stories. Maybe those weren't just legends or metaphors or whatever. Maybe they were like, no, this is recorded history. Exactly.
I mean, you look at the past history. You look at the Great Pyramids, and I've been there. I've stood at the base of the Pyramid of Giza, and I've looked up at it. And I've also stood at the base of the Empire State Building, and I've looked up at it. And the Pyramid of Giza is far more impressive than the Empire State Building, or the Sears Tower for that matter, or the Willis Tower, or whatever. Doesn't matter. It's far more impressive than any man-made creation on this planet. And this was made, we're actually closer in time right now to Cleopatra than Cleopatra was to when the Pyramid of Giza was constructed, which is mind-boggling. But I can tell you right now, full transparency, I do not believe that was built with just human hands, ancient human hands. There's something that either they don't know, or that they're not telling us about the construction of the pyramids. And I think that that's the biggest key that's right in front of our face that can tell us about our history.
The craziest thing to me is when I was a little kid, I would dive into all this stuff too. I was fascinated with all of it. And the pyramids, before I was reading the books when I was a little kid in the library, I really just thought that it was crazy enough that they were just stacking all these stones.
Yeah.
Then when you find out that there's chambers and there's all kinds of different shafts and there's all kinds of different stuff going on inside of this, I still can't wrap my head fully around how they achieved that in the way that they did.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense, even from modern engineering perspectives, modern architectural perspectives. The measurements, everything is precise. There's numbers. What is it? Something like, where the ley lines are with the pyramids. I'm not an Egyptologist, not an expert in this stuff, but there's no coincidence.
Well, many would argue most Egyptologists aren't an expert in it either.
Yeah, well, there you go. But it's like it equals pi or something like that. It's like there's the numbers there jump off the page. People can Google that, the numbers in correlation to the pyramids of Giza. But you feel a certain energy there. And I recently read that satellites had seen plasma gathering over the pyramids in the sky. So I don't know what that's about, but that was interesting.
That is interesting.
So you can go down a million different roads with this stuff.
Man. I don't know. Do you think we'll ever really know the truth?
I think we're getting close. I think the veil is slowly lifting, because it seems like sightings are going up. There's acknowledgement of UAPs and UFOs. Some of this stuff, I mean, you've got people like attending congressional testimonials, behind closed doors and learning about like ultra terrestrials, which are terrestrials that are just going back and forth through dimensions. And people saying, well, yeah, no, these UAPs aren't built by humans, but they're not from outer space either. What does that mean? You know what I mean? We don't know hardly anything about what's underground. So this, I think that I think we're going to know sooner than later. I think within our lifetimes, if we stay healthy, anyways, we're gonna know this stuff. Possibly even within a decade.
Yeah, and if anybody out there sees a Bigfoot carcass, please, take the phone out and do something useful with it for once and film it.
Yeah. This was my friend when he found one. He didn't have a phone. I mean, this was before camera phones.
Yeah. It's interesting because it really does seem like we're racing towards. We're gonna have conclusive across the board because disclosure, I really strongly believe it's not necessarily going to come from the top. It's going to come from the ground. It's a grassroots thing. I think if it comes from the top, it's going to be like, man, what are they cooking up that they're really trying to distract us from right now? One of those sort of things. And we are seeing that, like you're saying, we're seeing a lot of reports. We're seeing a lot of extremely unbelievably convincing encounters and just these sightings that it's difficult to come up with an explanation that's not the one that we're being given by the people that witness this stuff. It sounds almost crazier to come up with a counter explanation or to dismiss it completely and say, oh, is this or is that? And that drives me nuts. I don't know if it drives you nuts when I hear about complete dismissal, and it's like, well, that means you must know what that is. Exactly. Blanketly dismiss it like that.
Exactly. I think you can factor Occam's razor into a lot of this stuff too. It is actually, to me, the simplest explanation that these are UFOs because of the vast size of the universe. Obviously, there's got to be. I mean, I think it's mathematically improbable that there's not advanced civilizations that can travel here. And people tend to think in linear terms of, traveling through space at light speed. It doesn't work like that. You travel through these wormholes. This could be a 10-minute journey. I mean, we just don't know it yet.
Yeah. It could, for all we know, it could even be instantaneous.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like teleportation or something.
Yeah. Now Now, in regards to what you've got on the docket for upcoming films or projects, you mentioned one of them that you're going to be doing a third movie in nature to this. Any other kind of subjects that you're tackling here in the same kind of field?
We are doing a film that's entirely dedicated to the Sierra Sounds. And anybody that follows Bigfoot knows the Sierra Sounds. And we've gotten unprecedented access to the folks outside of Ron Moorhead, who's the most famous person in regards to the Sierra Sounds. There were other men that were part of that hunting party, and we're telling their stories as well. So it's a combination. We're telling, Al Berry's story and the Johnson's story, and along with Ron's story and Bill McDowell. So those men have come and they've spoken on camera, and we're gonna get even more details about the Sierra Sounds to really truly show that what happened up there in the Sierras was Bigfoot related and was unprecedented.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, I can't wait to see that.
It's gonna be really good. We are very excited. And
those are one of those things that I don't know what the hell that is. That's making. If anyone hasn't heard,
it sounds like a guy just like or some guys just like making noises into a microphone. But when you start pulling it apart and really listening to it, that's not what it is at all.
And it's got like a a duo or sometimes a trio of tones.
Mm-hmm.
It's strange. It doesn't sound like there's multiple voices. Sometimes it just sounds like the voice that's making it has a multi-tonal thing going on.
That's exactly what's going on.
Very, very odd.
If you put the Sierra Sounds into a waveform and you look at the frequencies and you look at the different tones, like you said, humans can't do it. We'd have to be a certain size. Dr. Lynn Curlin, did some investigation and determined that whatever was making these sounds had to have been 7 to 7.5 feet tall.
Wow.
And massive lung capacity. Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. So that's good. It's been really fun, and I think it's going to be a great documentary.
Before you go, any cryptids still left on your wish list of what to make a documentary of?
Dogman's on the list. And I made a promise to my wife when we started this to do a Dogman documentary, and we're getting to it. We've just got some other movies to get out of the way first. But it's on the horizon. We've talked to somebody, and it'll probably be just their story, maybe a couple other interviews smattered in there. But that's something that we hope to start, within the next year or so.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we say goodbye, where can they find you? Where can they see your films?
The best way to check them out right now is at A Flash of Bigfoot. That's the name of our YouTube channel. You can just type in A Flash of Beauty and you'll come up with the channel. You come up with the movies. So we've put all the movies and all the interviews on YouTube for free. They're ad supported. Or if you don't want to watch the ads, you can go on Amazon and watch them both. I think A Flash of Beauty Paranormal Bigfoot right now is on Tubi. And it's on a couple of other different places like Paraflix and Apple Music and whatnot.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Brett, thank you so much. This was great, man.
Thank you, Peter.
I still have some more questions and whatnot for you, but maybe we'll have to reschedule and get you back on again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to come back.
All right. Thank you so much. Everybody in the chat, thank you guys, too. Really appreciate you guys being here tonight for this. Brett, again, thank you. This was fantastic. Really appreciate you being generous with your time tonight, too, and the conversation was great. Thank you very much, man.
You're more than welcome. Anytime.
All right, everybody, have a wonderful night and an even better tomorrow. We'll see you soon. All the best.